Madlanga Commission heard testimony this week that the instruction to disband the KZN political killing task team by Police Minister Senzo Mchunu ignored legal processes. Giving testimony, SAPS legal expert Major-General Marga Van Rooyen said the police minister often defied the legal scope of his work and that he and Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya seemed to have been prepared to protect criminal elements. The KZN Director of Public Prosecutions also testified that on hearing of the disbanding of the PKTT in the media, she believed it was fake news as she believed it was doing good work. What do we make of these testimonies? And what kind of accountability should the police minister face? Executive Director for the Accountability Division at OUTA, Advocate Stefanie Fick, weighs in. Good morning, Advocate. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. It's only a pleasure.
Now, the Madlanga Commission has heard damning testimony that Minister Mchunu gave what amounts to an unlawful instruction to disband the KZN political killings task team, with SAPS legal head Major-General Van Rooyen stating this was never appropriate. Now, given that this unit was actively investigating 121 dockets, how do you view Mchunu's actions in the context of constitutional governance?
Well, without making, a ruling that he is guilty of all kinds of crimes, I think we also need to take into consideration that, criminal aspect of all of this is one aspect. The second aspect, I think, that is very important is the fact that South Africa needs ethical leaders. And was this ethical behavior? And I think what we've heard so far, and obviously I think part of what the commission is about, is that the minister will have an opportunity to come and answer for these allegations, and one has to hear what he has to say. But on what we've heard so far, I really hope that there will be some accountability. If we are going to do something about our high crime rate and the fact that we don't necessarily see accountability due to, either lack of political will, political interference, etc. Hopefully this is an example that we cannot allow political interference, we cannot allow this to happen, and that there will really be accountability for what has happened.
Sure. Now, Van Rooyen has corroborated that proper legal processes were not followed. Now, in your legal opinion, Advocate, what specific constitutional principles and laws did Mchunu violate through this instruction?
Well, if he, I think it goes back to, this is what you, under normal circumstances, evidence that I would use in a disciplinary hearing. So do I want this employee in my, employed in my business, whatever? And the answer is probably no. Whether the minister committed any crime, one will have to go look if there's enough evidence to say that he was, defeating the ends of justice, that he assisted, for example, in money laundering, corruption, organized crime. And that is your criminal cases. And that's why I sometimes think, although criminal prosecutions obviously are extremely important, and if there are evidence, that the MPA will look at it and decide to prosecute if there's enough evidence. But it's not just about criminal and crimes. It is about, did someone contravene policies, procedure, etc., that, like in this circumstances? And then the question is, should this person be in this position? And furthermore, should this person be ever employed somewhere else? And I think prima facie it appears that hopefully the president, who is in charge of, who should be a minister and who should be removed as minister, that he will take this seriously and seriously consider removing the minister permanently.
Now, speaking of the president, Advocate, if the president did indeed discuss this with Mchunu, does that conversation provide any legal cover for Mchunu's actions, or does it potentially implicate the president in this constitutional violation?
Now, I would rather say that it actually implicate the president, and that then both of their behaviors, one should ask, is that ethical? Again, It's maybe a stupid question in terms of, the circumstances that are not employees. But again, do we want that type of employee to be in the employment of government? And I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make it better that he has asked the president. You know what? I actually want to say the following, is they should know better. People in senior positions, people in senior leadership should know that political interference is a big no-no, and that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't get involved in the operational side of things, and I think we have seen it, in the bigger political space. Why is, for example, political killing such a big problem? It's because of tenders
and the big thing I was about
government.
to ask, like, in whose interest would it be for them to disband this task team?
Probably, local government. We are heading towards a new local government elections, and I hope people keep this in mind when they go to the ballot boxes. But I think that it is about who gets the money on the ground, who is the tenders going to, because there is where the money is.
Sure.
And that's why local governments are in a mess.
Right. And the timeline here is crucial because Mchunu issued this instruction on December the 31st, essentially using a holiday period when oversight mechanisms might be less active. Was this timing deliberate?
Probably. I mean, we've seen previously over Christmas, they like to also, put out laws or bills in order for people to comment. Who on earth will comment on a bill over December? So I do think whether it was or wasn't, I think what one sees, again, prima facie, that what just a normal person would come to the conclusion that this was probably done on purpose, because December people is relaxing, and everybody's on holiday.
Sure.
And why this specific time? So yes, I think it was deliberate.
Now, Advocate, the president has remained notably silent while his minister faces these serious allegations. Should President Ramaphosa be called before the commission to clarify exactly what he knew about this unlawful instruction?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Madlanga Commission must, for once and for all, listen to all available evidence, which I, in this instance, include the president. The president is not above our constitution, and he should be asked. And if he knew, that would be, he should also be held accountable. And I think most importantly is that the general public out there should also know about this. Part of why this is so dangerous is the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability. And that part of, I think, the mission of the Madlanga Commission is to hang this on the clock so that people can see, not only the political interference and what has happened, but the consequences thereof. Because if the task team was closed for nefarious reasons and those dockets were sent, I think the reason is so that investigations and prosecutions do not happen. And that is the tragedy. And
Sure.
I think that needs to be transparent.
Now, Advocate Fick, we've heard testimony that Mchunu was allegedly angry at the political killings task team's murder case breakthroughs. So if a minister is frustrated by successful police work in solving political assassinations, what does that suggest about potential ulterior motives behind this disbandment order? Should this angle be investigated further?
Yes, I do think so. I think it is. I don't know if I want to cry or be angry. I think it's those two emotions that you feel when you hear this of a minister that's supposed to take the correct path when it comes to the SAPS. We have an enormous problem with crime rates, not just organized crime, but ordinary citizens being exposed to robberies, housebreaking, etc. There are communities that are really gang violence, they are not safe. And then you hear something like this, and I really think that although I think that there's already a trust deficit, that it breaks the trust that ordinary citizens put in leaders that are supposed to help communities, pull them out of this crime nightmare in order for us to build a South Africa where everybody feels safe.
So how can we ensure that future police commissioners feel empowered to resist unlawful political interference, and what protections should be in place?
I think it starts from the top. So you need to, how do the president pick ministers? You know, how do we pick the people that are supposed to occupy these very important positions? And I want to go back to what I've started with. This is about ethical leaders. We need leaders that will stand up, but there needs to be an environment created where leaders can stand up and say, but this is what we need to do and not and what we can and cannot do. Because my question is that if a ethical leader stood up, you know, would that person be fired? And that is not the type of thing we need in South Africa. I want to compare it to, for example, whistleblowers. We need whistleblowers to stand up and tell us what is happening. But in South Africa, currently, whistleblowers are not being treated very well. And to me, it's the same. We need to create an environment where whistleblowers can stand up. We can have ethical leaders, they will stand up, and it all starts at the top. And that's what I'm saying. When we go to when we go voting next year for our in local elections, we should keep all of this in mind.
Now, before we let you go, Advocate, OUTA has been at the forefront of holding government officials accountable for overstepping their mandate. So, what concrete steps should civil society organizations like yours be taking to ensure that everyone who's implicated faces real consequences for these actions beyond just testimony at this commission?
Yeah, it's the same question. You know, we had a beautiful Zondo Commission that told us everything we wanted to know about state capture and where are we. I think it is civil society's duty to advocate for the accountability of all implicated persons and to hold, for example, institutions like the police accountable, the NPA accountable, but also to assist. I mean, civil society is not there to just criticize. And if there is anything civil society can assist with, that institutions like the NPA and the SAPS open their doors for us to have a conversation in order to assist. And I think it is about, you know, advocating the transparency in what we have seen and to advocate for the ethical leadership to take over and for there to be a political will in order to effect change. And then one of the examples is, for example, delinquency. We've quite recently instituted delinquent director proceedings against Helen Botha, you know, for what has happened at JPC and the Usinisu fire where people lost their lives. And these are the type of things that hopefully, although we can't do everything, these are steps in the right direction in order to ensure that people are held accountable.
Sure. And lastly, very briefly, as OUTA, are you considering any legal action to compel accountability?
Definitely. I think it is about evidence and it is about what is shared and the information. And if there is anything we can do in order to hold someone to account and to assist in getting a better and safer South Africa, you bet we will do that.
All right. Advocate, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
All right. So that was OUTA Accountability Division Executive Director, Advocate Stefanie Fick.